Hello. Our story begins inside the executive office of the Chancellor inside the executive building. The Jedi allowed Anakin Skywalker a chance to visit with the Chancellor per Palpatine's request. There was a secret mission that the elder politician wanted assistance with, and he believed that Skywalker would make a good partner in such a mission. For Anakin, he was super excited about it. It was basically his first mission without Obi-Wan. Palpatine saw it as a chance to push Anakin further away from the Jedi. This event would be the first time in the relationship where they actually had one-on-one time. The rest of the times had been basically interactions between Palpatine and Master Kenobi, all of them being supervised by one of the most Jedi-like individuals in the Order. Palpatine and Anakin's dynamic hadn't really gone anywhere yet. It was still in its infancy, and probably for a good reason. Palpatine didn't want to come across as too eager to be around the Chosen One. The whole purpose for these ops was to get Anakin to trust him. Initially, he was hoping that this little mission would actually push Anakin out of the Order, and it almost did too. Palpatine was very persuasive, and because he wasn't a Jedi, Anakin found a reason to listen to him. It was Palpatine's most defining quality. For young Anakin, simply put, Palpatine wasn't under the control of a secret code and an ancient religion. Plus, he was a lot less controlling than Kenobi or any of the other instructors Anakin had during his youngling trials and training. He was just open to everything, and Anakin found this very alluring. He liked that individuals had the ability to think for themselves and be who they wanted to be. While their mission together wasn't long, it was a foundation and a bond between Anakin and Palpatine. When Skywalker left the mission, he informed Obi-Wan that he would like to leave the Order, so inversely, Kenobi gave Anakin an ultimatum, and gave him a chance to find peace with the Order. At the end of the day, Anakin chose the Jedi and never ended up leaving. After the small mission with Palpatine, Anakin yearned for more chances to be around the elder politician. His stories were unlike anyone else's, and because of that, he wanted to learn more. Why learn from books or hollow recordings when the most interesting people could teach you lessons with their stories? Palpatine didn't give any boring stories either. He always told things that one might not expect a politician to understand. But the way Palpatine described his stories made him even more relatable. This was done intentionally. When they first met with each other for their first mission, Palpatine asked for a rundown on everything in Anakin's life. The little chatterbox didn't stop, so Palpatine had his pick of the litter. He literally just chose stories that related to Anakin and what was going on in his life, and explained them through an uplifting standpoint, one that made it seem as if the road less traveled would benefit him the most. Of course, Palpatine intended this to help Anakin in the means of leaving the Order, but after Kenobi convinced Anakin to stay, the meaning became more so about the idea of handling his own training with more control under his own control. The next few times Anakin and Palpatine rekindled, they spoke to each other about excitement in certain areas of life. Anakin loved to praise his own lightsaber skill, suggesting that he was stronger than Master Kenobi. That wasn't true, but he believed it was. There were other things, information that told Palpatine what made Skywalker bored, feel alone, feel disappointed, pulled him away from the Order, and so forth. Again, Palpatine used all these little tidbits of information to tell actual stories, but shaped them in a way for Anakin to feel more comfortable with him. Skywalker trusted Palpatine. He had a way about him that just made him feel so comforting, which is why Anakin was perfectly fine with trusting Sheev. Palpatine at this point made it clear that Anakin could call him Sheev, but Anakin always believed in respecting elders, so he referred to him as Chancellor. Plus, Anakin didn't want to get into the habit of calling Palpatine Sheev, and then doing it by accident in front of another Jedi, specifically Obi-Wan. While Anakin already considered Obi-Wan like a father figure, Anakin's feelings towards Sheev were warm. He saw him as a mentor, but maybe even like a grandfather. It was hard to explain. He trusted him, and he was a masculine elder, so it was basically a grandfather. Plus, aren't fathers and sons and grandfathers and grandsons supposed to have different relationships anyways? Anakin thought so. So in his own mind, that's what Palpatine kind of was to him. Because Skywalker didn't have his own family, he built it in those closest to him. Obi-Wan was his father figure, Palpatine his grandfather, and Barriss Offee was like a sister, being only a year younger than him, and the only one from their classes to treat him kindly. Oh, and how could Anakin forget Ayla, who was like an older sister? It was the best thing for Anakin. It brought him a sense of peace and familial ties, one that filled his heart with a sense of completion. On the flip side of Anakin's emotions, the lifetime cold individual that was Palpatine felt some sort of bond, though he didn't pay any attention to it. Sheev's life had been full of pain and suffering, having killed both of his parents and at that, his entire family at the age of 10. He wasn't the warmest or cuddliest individual in the galaxy. Of course, he had the choice to be warmer or colder, and he went with the latter, simply due to it being easier than finding warmth within oneself or those around them. So, because Palpatine had no real connection with anyone, not even his students, he saw this little bond between him and Skywalker as his own personal excitement to take Anakin under his wing and destroy the Jedi once and for all. How else was he supposed to interpret the feeling? It's not like Palpatine was going soft, or he would ever go soft. That was entirely against him. The plan continued forward, and his eagerness to turn the Chosen One kept his mind focused on the future and the prize, though as those years went by, he started to genuinely care about Skywalker. This was entirely Anakin's fault. Whenever he accomplished something, came back from a mission, or had anything super exciting to talk about, he would request time to visit Palpatine. Of course, Sheev always made time for Anakin. He wanted his prized pupil, and he needed everything he could to work Anakin against the Jedi. What Palpatine never expected was that, aside from Obi-Wan or Ayla from time to time, Sheev was one of the first people to hear about anything in Anakin's life. He made sure to tell every detail too, and Palpatine could feel himself getting excited for Skywalker. All these moments in life popping up, each met with excitement and eagerness for what came next. Palpatine was genuinely involved in Anakin's life, and the first time his own excitement actually made sense to him was after a talk session. Anakin and he walked to the edge of the office. Anakin turned to him and opened his arms and embraced him, telling him that he was so appreciative for everything he did for him. Anakin knew Palpatine was a busy man, and he just appreciated the fact that he made time for Anakin and listened to him. Palpatine was kind of dumbfounded by the entire experience. It was the first hug he probably ever had since he was born. Even that was a long shot, though. He just stood there kind of like a statue, and then placed his hand on Anakin's shoulder and told him that he would always be here to listen to him. Anakin thanked him and bolted off. Of course, to the Dark Lord, this was nothing more than a manipulation tactic. Tell Anakin he would always be there to listen, and just be there. Just another way to make the Jedi and or Obi-Wan look worse. As Anakin started reaching adulthood, Palpatine's plans were coming to fruition. After Dooku's failed bombing on Padme Amidala, he sent Padme to be cared for by Anakin Skywalker, which had the two of them going to Naboo. The story went that they fell in love there, and then got married after the Battle of Geonosis, but Palpatine was unsure. That was just Anakin's very quick and excitable announcement of the situation. At the moment, to Palpatine, this was the greatest thing that could have ever happened. The reason for that being the case was he could use it to exploit Anakin even more than he did before. Using Anakin's attachment to Padme would be instrumental in turning him to the dark side, not to mention the recent passing of Anakin's mother and the loss of his dominant forearm. Skywalker was assigned the most elite unit in the Grand Army of the Republic, because Palpatine wanted him to be the poster boy of the Republic war effort. Anakin didn't see it as it was being done, but Palpatine worked in the shadows to make sure Anakin was propped up. During the Clone Wars, Palpatine realized that his bond with Skywalker was his plans coming to fruition. He saw everything from the past years, and this year itself, as a confirmation of his initial feelings. Because he never really had a bond, he now knew everything he was feeling was just simply his excitement manifesting in different ways. He was able to get the boy to be the warrior he would later become as a Sith. There was nothing he had to do except prolong the war until Skywalker was far enough down the dark path to turn to the dark side without much of a push. Their bond continued very similarly to how it had been since their first mission years prior. When Palpatine felt Anakin was ready, it was in the middle of the war on Naboo. It was shortly after Jedi Master Kenobi secretly became bounty hunter Ranko Hardeen. The secret mission foiled an attempt to capture Palpatine for who knows what. Palpatine knew it would never happen, but it was just another attempt at a plan that would never see the light of day. Inside the Palace of Theed, Palpatine and Anakin walked along the halls talking with each other. Palpatine prided Anakin on his idea for the mission involving Master Kenobi, to which Anakin said he was unaware of said mission. Palpatine pushed Anakin down the path, suggesting that perhaps the Jedi should be more trusting of him, and inform him when a mission comes along. Before the hyping of Anakin could come to a conclusion, a duel began between Anakin and Dooku. The Sith Lord had been waiting for Anakin to arrive, and was testing him once again, per his master's request. The duel was flashy, and there were parts where Palpatine saw highs and lows in Anakin's work. He flourished a couple times early on, but then it slowed down, before picking up again. It was becoming clearer than ever before that his investment was worthwhile. During the duel, Dooku almost hit Palpatine by accident, and because it was by accident, Palpatine had to redirect the blade ever so slightly with the Force, which Anakin noted. It was clear enough that one could tell it had been done intentionally. Once Dooku escaped, Palpatine thanked the Jedi for their efforts to protect him again. Anakin and Obi-Wan weren't really speaking yet, as Anakin was trying to get used to the idea that his master wasn't truly dead. Once Obi-Wan walked away, Anakin and Palpatine picked up their conversations. As was revealed by Skywalker, the entire situation wasn't told to him, so he had no clue that his master didn't actually die. Instead of getting happy or joyful over the idea of the Jedi being so ignorant to not let Anakin in on the secret, he became concerned, asking Anakin how he actually was feeling and if there was something he wanted to say about it. Again, the bond of grandfather and grandson becoming prevalent through this interaction. For Anakin, this was incredibly important. Of course, he was happy that Obi-Wan didn't die, but that didn't prevent him from being upset that Kenobi lied to him about faking his death. Palpatine being in his corner, being a warm presence and a guiding hand was everything Anakin needed. Yet for Palpatine, he never realized that it was indeed something he needed too. As the war furthered along, two major events would change the trajectory of the galaxy. Palpatine would kill both Maul and Savage on Mandalore, leaving the rivalry to he and Dooku's duo unmatched. And then Palpatine would be forced to oversee the trial of Ahsoka Tano. During the trial, Tarkin would suggest the harshest penalty would be brought down on her. While initially Palpatine wanted Anakin to feel the burn of this, he knew he couldn't do that to him. Due to their close bond, he knew how important Ahsoka was to Anakin, so he suggested a lighter sentence. It would be life in prison, but it was better than being killed for her apparent crimes. Anakin was never in the trial room, but Palpatine never needed to worry about it being brought down on Ahsoka. She would be freed by Anakin. Ahsoka would make a note of Palpatine's change to the sentencing after the trial, and how it was kind of his friend to do that for her. Anakin had no clue, but it definitely made him appreciate the Chancellor more, especially because he would go to Palpatine's office after Ahsoka left the Jedi Order. The conversation would be still. Very few words would be said between Anakin and Palpatine. There wasn't really anything that would be said or could be said. Skywalker was trying to keep his tears back, because losing Ahsoka was the most incredible pain since his mother's death. Obviously she wasn't dead, but he never knew when he might see her again. When their conversation came to an end, Anakin expressed that he didn't want to make Palpatine uncomfortable or break past any potential boundaries, but he expressed that he greatly appreciated Palpatine and he loved him like a grandfather. What he had done for him over the years meant more than anything, and he felt as if there was nothing he could do to repay Palpatine for everything he did for him. Being told he was loved was weird. Palpatine's own mother didn't say that to him. His father was a different story. The mean cuss wasn't ever home to begin with. And when he was silent, sitting in his study with a record player on demanding his solitude. Palpatine never really had a voice to tell him that he had some sort of abundant value to him. Love was such an odd construct, and being that he didn't even know how to respond, he just gave a smile and told Anakin that he was honored he could fill such a role for him. As Anakin walked towards the door, Palpatine stopped him, and asked that he come back and sit down. The Sith Lord wasn't breaking from the dark side, but maybe he was. It didn't make sense in his own mind. Skywalker came back in with a confused face. Maybe he went too far by expressing that he loved Palpatine. He was unnerved by Palpatine's sudden change in tone. Anakin sat down and Palpatine stood next to the desk, leaning on it ever so slightly. He told Anakin that there was a truth about him, and he would like to inform Anakin because if he really was like a grandfather to him, then Anakin was really like a grandson to himself. It was a weird feeling, but he didn't want to lose all of its strength. Palpatine was holding on to the first bond he ever had. It was like a natural part of him was latching on, crying out for a moment to not be abandoned. He told Anakin that he didn't want this secret to leave the two of them, and Anakin promised he wouldn't tell a soul. He wished he hadn't made such promises, but Palpatine told him that he was a Sith Lord. Anakin looked at him for a moment. It was a really long moment, and then out of nowhere he bursted out laughing. He told Palpatine he couldn't be a Sith Lord. He was far too kind for that. Look at all the good he'd done for the last 12 years in office. He was one of the most inspiring men in the entire galaxy. He was even clocked Person of the Year 2 years before the Clone Wars started. There was no way he could be evil and brooding and full of bad plans to rip everything apart. Palpatine's face was blank for a moment, before he pulled his lightsaber out and handed it to Anakin, telling him that it was the truth. Anakin looked at the lightsabers. They were gorgeous, and upon their ignition, his laughs died out, and he realized that there was an issue. Palpatine told Anakin that he did make a promise, and he wished that Anakin would keep said promise. Skywalker asked him why. Why did he tell him? Palpatine looked at the boy for a moment, pondering over his decisions. Anakin looked at Palpatine and asked if he wanted to come over to the light. Palpatine shot up and told him that such a notion was preposterous. He wouldn't dare turn to the light. He was a Sith. The entire thing was ridiculous. Anakin told Palpatine that it wasn't, standing up, expressing that their bond was one of family, asking if Palpatine ever had one himself. Sheev shook his head. Of course he didn't have a family. Why would he? He was always building the master plan for the Sith. Anakin started pacing around the room, expressing openly, as if he were talking to himself aloud, that he would have to be wary though. Since he was a Sith Lord, he'd have to atone for his actions in creating the war, because there's no way Dooku could have been behind the entire— Wait a minute. That meant he was behind the attacks on Padme Amidala. A lightsaber ignited and Palpatine turned over to Skywalker. He held the blade with rage in his eyes. Well, this was interesting. An originally vulnerable moment devolved into a potential battle. Palpatine would defend himself, but he would not kill Anakin. Well, maybe he wouldn't. Everything was so convoluted. How was he supposed to act, or what was he supposed to do in this moment? Skywalker's mind was an intergalactic pong table, bouncing back and forth between reactions. Initially, he thought killing Palpatine might be a bad look, but the melon killed millions by starting a war. However, perhaps he did it because there was something he was unaware of. Anakin didn't know Palpatine's backstory. He could have literally been raised a Sith without ever having love or affection, so now he finally got it, which is why he was acting weird in response to it. Well, the second part was technically true, but Anakin didn't know that, so he told Palpatine to give him one reason why he shouldn't kill him. Palpatine said it himself. He spoke expressively, telling Anakin that truthfully he couldn't give him a good reason. Skywalker was a Jedi. His duty was to bring balance to the Force, to eradicate the Sith, and well, he found the head honcho. Palpatine was a Sith Lord, despite being younger than Dooku too. His death would make up for the war, the death, the destruction, and everything. So he asked Anakin why he hadn't killed him yet. Anakin stood his ground, because despite finding out what Palpatine was behind and the attempts on Padme's life, which should make this entire thing a little awkward, he still hadn't killed him. Anakin looked at his lightsaber. That was true. Well, maybe it was because he had hoped that Palpatine could change his ways, or perhaps Palpatine could be saved, or despite the fact that Anakin was extremely protective of her Padme, turning Palpatine could keep her safe. Anakin deignited his weapon, and told Palpatine that they could talk through this together. Maybe they could bring him over to the light. The reluctance from Palpatine was very noticeable, but Anakin suggested that it could be brought into his own family. The Jedi would likely not accept him, but he would still have a family to call his own. Palpatine shook his head. They could never be a family. They weren't related. Anakin smiled and told him that some things were stronger than blood. Obviously, there was so much holding Palpatine away from the light. His entire life was defined by burrowing further and further into the darkness, rejecting any sense of light or companionship or connection, so that he could become the most powerful Sith. He saw behind him an entire life missed for power that still wasn't yet guaranteed. Anakin reached his hand out from the other side of the room and told Palpatine to join him. They could end this war together. They could save clone and civilian lives. They could destroy the Sith, and they could bring balance to the Force as one. After all that was said and done, Anakin could teach Palpatine what it was like to become a beacon of light, allowing the light to envelop him, to become a part of him. Anakin certainly wasn't Master Zenobei, but he was a Jedi, and that was better than being a Sith. There was a pull for Sidious. The choice was career or family. He could have the legacy as the greatest Sith the galaxy had ever seen, or he could extinguish the Sith and be the greatest grandfather the Skywalker family had ever had. To some, the choice would be a no-brainer. For Sidious, though, he didn't know what he wanted. He told Anakin that to leave behind everything he'd ever known was the most uncomfortable thing about this. But Anakin told him that he could undo everything he did in the Senate, he could undo everything he did for the war, and so on. He knew where Dooku was and everything he could do. All Palpatine needed to do was pull Dooku and the CIS into an open battle to eradicate them. If the Republic was corrupt, he could change that himself. He already did instrumental change in the last 12 years of his tenure. He might not be a Sith legend, but he could be the man that restored the Republic to an era of prosperity. Generations could refer to him as the one who ended the Clone Wars and liberated the Outer Rim, or whatever it was he wanted to do. The choice was his to make, his legacy to build, but Anakin wanted Palpatine to know that if he chose the way of the Sith, he would lose all chance for familial connection. Anakin would be forced to inform the Jedi, and they would have to come for him. Palpatine might have a plan, a backup one if that, he might not. But that was Anakin's mandate to the light. Anakin didn't want to say mandate to the Order because of his recent trial to Ahsoka, so it was to the light. Palpatine waited for a minute. Actually, a lot of minutes. They sat in silence for about an hour. When it was done, Palpatine told Anakin he had a plan. It would be the perfect way to defeat the Separatists. He'd pull the Council and put them on Keddon Amodia. The Republic was about to win there anyways, and then he could draw Dooku and Grievous into a fight at Kuat to destroy the Republic shipyards. There were experimental interdictors inside the shipyards that could be used to keep the Separatists stuck. All they'd have to do was set up a trap. However, there was one issue. Anakin asked what it was. He said that once Dooku was dead, he would technically be the last of the Sith. With Maul, Savage, and Dooku gone, the legacy of the Sith would be on him. And if he was able to make the conscious decision to betray the Sith and become a Jedi, a curse would be unleashed on Morabon. Anakin asked what that meant. He said that the homeworld of the Sith was where all the secrets and artifacts were kept. Once he turned to the light, a curse would be released, one raising legions of the dead to attack the Jedi. Palpatine said that this curse was meant for the Jedi to fall and be consumed with the dark curse. Once the individual Jedi is consumed, they are resurrected and given a short leash to find the child of the Force and bring them back to the temple. The undead Jedi would then die and be consumed by the planet. The child of the Force would be used to restart the Sith Order. Anakin asked how these cursed creatures could be killed, and Sidious explained that lightsaber could do it. But if he were to turn, he needed to inform the Council. Anakin thought for a moment, and realized that this would be as awkward as it got, asking Palpatine if he preferred here or the Jedi Temple. Palpatine said the temple because it would make the Jedi feel safer. Everything from there would be arranged. Palpatine clearly was on edge about this entire ordeal. Giving himself over to the light wasn't a small task, and he wasn't even sure he was on board with it yet. He still had a chance to call off the bet and undo it if he wanted. Obviously, he would be forced into hiding because of his identity, but the literal only thing he was holding on to was the fact that Anakin could be his family. That singular hope was the only drive he had to undo all of his efforts up until this point in his life. Anakin was still put off by the revelation and the fact that Palpatine had done so much wrong. But maybe it could be made right. His hope was that the galaxy would find peace, and that the Sith would be extinguished. On the other hand, he would try and find it within himself to forgive Palpatine's actions against Padme. Palpatine's chit-chat with the High Council was exciting as one might think it would be. Palpatine told the Council about everything he was, everything he did, and the fact that he was a Sith Lord. Let's be clear, the Jedi did not see that coming. They thought that Palpatine wanted to talk with them about diplomacy or Jedi interactions within the Republic due to the bombing, but nope, this had to do with the fact that he was a Sith. When the words came out of his mouth, Palpatine expected the Jedi to cut him down, but they didn't budge. They just looked at him with confusion. Anakin was next to Palpatine, which was even more confusing, but upon the revelation of the Crimson lightsabers, it was proven truthful. When the Council asked for his motivation, he explained that it was his familial bond with Anakin. He didn't say anything about Padme, he just said that over the years, Anakin had become like a grandson to him. And because Palpatine knew about the biases of the Council, he hyped Anakin up a ton, expressing that despite being the Dark Lord of the Sith, Anakin somehow managed to see past it and see the best in him and bring it out, suggesting that Anakin was really master material. That was odd and rough. Also, why would the Council take the word of a former or current Sith? It didn't make Anakin look great, but the attempt was worth acknowledging. And while the concept of the Sith Lord suggesting Anakin become a Jedi Master was funny, they couldn't deny the fact that this whole situation upset everything they believed to be true. It forced members, especially older ones of the Council, to reconsider their loyalty to the Republic. The Jedi obviously couldn't deny Palpatine if he was betraying the dark side, but everything felt odd. They didn't just want to accept it, however, they made a deal. If Palpatine could tear down the CIS establishment, surrender over their most valuable assets, and force them into a costly defeat, then they would accept him into their ranks. Not that he wanted to be one of them, but that wasn't the choice. They would teach him how to surrender himself to the light. For their own collective interest, they wanted a midichlorian count as well. But yeah, that's really it. They didn't know what to say, or what to do. It was all so sudden, and they kind of wanted the war over, so they could face this whole Palpatine debacle. If he wanted to turn, they would embrace it. No reason to push it back. Mundi wanted to execute him, but Windu believed it'd be better for the Jedi as a whole to accept the last Sith into their ranks as they erased the Sith Order. They would have to prepare for a journey to Morabon, though, just to ensure the Sith were destroyed. It would only take a few weeks for Palpatine. He would plan the total collapse of the CIS, and the final battle would take place at Kuat. The Republic shipyards were important as a target. Sidious wanted Dooku and Grievous present because the Jedi would be there, and both enforcers were to be present in case the Jedi tried to board a command ship. The battle went as such. CIS dropped out of hyperspace with the largest amassed fleet the galaxy had ever seen. From 3 different quadrants, 3 massive Republic fleets emerged, one with the experimental superstar Dreadnought the Pride of the Core. The CIS was trapped, but not entirely. They still could escape, until the interdicted field was opened up from behind Republic lines, and the battle was fought. It cost the entire Separatist fleet, Dooku, and Grievous. All that remained was the capture of the Separatist Council in Kedah Namuria, which followed about a month after Kuat. During this month-long period, the Separatist government began the process of surrender after disregarding the council that got them into this war. Palpatine worked on undoing some of his Imperial building blocks as the Republic closed in on ending the war. All in the meantime, he was preparing for his great turn, something that as the day got closer, he feared doing. He knew that the dark side was stronger, however resisting the darkness and abstaining to the light elicited more power than he could possibly imagine. He just didn't know that yet. He would learn it once it happened. The Jedi just never told him about it. And because he was revealed to be the Sith Lord, Mace Windu, Yoda, Agen Kolar, Kit Fisto, and Saesee Tiin spent time around him 24/7. They didn't follow him to the Chancellor's mansion, but they did sit with him in his office or follow him around in meetings. As explained by the Jedi and Palpatine, it was just extra security, but the purpose was to make sure Palpatine was working on exercises when he wasn't busy. These exercises were generations older than Yoda, but they had been perfected in the thousands of years since the beginning of the Jedi. Each exercise helped reveal the light in the darkness. It was both clarity and also acceptance of the light, both of which helping Palpatine become closer to a Jedi. Before the peace treaty could be signed in neutral territory, Palpatine requested the High Council and a number of other warrior Jedi to join him on their mission to the Sith home world. No one knew what to expect, but Palpatine requested that 400 Jedi come. Initially, the Jedi were very skeptical of this, but because he didn't request every Jedi, it was alright. It clearly wasn't a trap, or at least hopefully it wasn't. They were all on edge, but Palpatine walked forward. He turned to the Jedi and told them that they needed to be ready for what came next. He did also request that the Jedi bring an extra blade for him. He stepped forward, donning the gowns of Darth Sidious, and he knelt a couple hundred meters from the Sith Temple. The Jedi watching all from behind as his knees fit neatly into the sand. He pulled his blades and broke the curse surrounding them, all of which done in ancient Sith. He then switched to Galactic Common and said, "Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, surrendered himself to the light side of the Force, the true path for anyone understanding of the Force. There is no passion, only peace. His strength was in his knowledge. His power was in his serenity. He found victory through harmony. Because there is no death, there was exclusively the Force." The ground began to rumble. The Jedi stepped backwards as they looked on in terror. The Sith Temple opened up, and a loud howling could be heard. Palpatine's crystals broke into millions of pieces as the red tint vanished into a pure light before his eyes. He turned back to the Jedi, removing his Sith robes and donning something closer to what a Jedi might wear. He told them that what came next would challenge all of them. Anakin tossed him 2 Jedi blades and he smiled, turning back to the ground as it began to get covered in dust. Palpatine spoke to the Council, telling them to be ready. Wait for them to come to them. The Jedi all readied their weapons. Hundreds of lightsabers ignited and the sound of the ground rumbling continued to get louder and louder as the beast got closer, and within moments' notice, Palpatine led the charge, informing the Jedi of the perfect time to strike. Every Jedi who stood shoulder to shoulder pressed forward, brothers and sisters in the Force, ending the curse of the Sith. Each warrior fought with precision, and the battle engulfed the former homeworld of the Sith. The Council was remarkable. What surprised the Jedi was the remarkable skill that was shown off by the former Sith Lord. Palpatine was so incredibly talented with a lightsaber, and they just never expected it. Anakin moved with Obi-Wan as Palpatine found harmony in the movements next to Yoda and Windu. Their speed as warriors were unmatched to just about anyone else in the battle. Palpatine made it clear that a Jedi was permitted to fall in battle, and a number of them did. However, they could not become possessed by the curse. So they had to do everything in their power to make sure that the Jedi who fell in battle were transported back to the temple, cleansed, and then buried. The battle lasted for hours, with the Jedi cutting away at the beast from the curse, though their resolve was one of peace and harmony. With each other standing by side, they were able to deliver the killing blow to the legacy of the Sith. It cost the Jedi nearly 100 members, but it was the cost of their war against the dark side. They were all volunteers, and they all died for their order and for the natural balance of the Force. When the curse was broken and the Sith were finally a dead religion, the Jedi watched the Sith Temple crumble. It wasn't the only one. Every single temple across the galaxy was left in ruins. Those who worshipped the Sith, like the Sith Eternal and Exegol, were ripped to pieces, all killed simultaneously. Before the Jedi left, the Council decided that Palpatine should become a Jedi Knight, where the Sith Temple was destroyed, requesting that they knight him here, and he accepted it. The knighting was done before all the final Jedi to ever see the final Sith. Their fall was accompanied by the rebirth of the true destiny of a Jedi. Palpatine, of course, would love to continue his journey as a Jedi now, especially since he was unlearning everything he had been taught. But there was one final order of business: the peace treaty and surrendering his seat as Chancellor. The seat he surrendered after the peace treaty was one that couldn't be handed over. but he did everything in his power to make sure the next Chancellor would be Padme Amidala, the most fit senator for the role. Her work, despite always being against his, always impressed him because she was always so genuine. Because Palpatine has so much to undo about himself, he was taken away from the temple with Master Terras Anube so that he could be taught the lessons of the Jedi and complete a bearish vow, one that the Council requested he finish. It was a long and arduous journey for the former Sith, because reducing his emotions towards darkness wasn't easy. He never wanted to let go of something he held onto for so long. Terras Anube was the perfect instructor to help him receive the light. This bearish vow was done without Skywalker, because Palpatine needed to choose the light by himself. This was a risk for Terras Anube, but he was prepared to do it. He wanted to help the cause just as much as anyone else. Palpatine would be gone for a year, and then by the time he returned, there was a great change in the world he knew. Anakin was a father, and his twins, Luke and Leia, were the pride of his life. The Jedi had their own feelings about it, and they were very close to making him one of their disgraced Jedi, like Eula Braylon, a former council member. But instead, they decided to give him a pass. After all, these emotions and warm feelings of love, care, patience, and adoration helped turn the most evil man in the galaxy into a Jedi. How could they disgrace Anakin after all of his emotions helped bring balance to the Force? So, he was permitted to stay in the Order as Master Skywalker. After all, it was Ahsoka Tano who rejoined the ranks of the Jedi Order with the war over. Chancellor Amidala made such a mark on the galaxy with Palpatine's seat that it forced the Jedi to be equally effective. They were forced to be out in the front lines of change in the galaxy, especially the Outer Rim. Having children was a bit of a surprise to her, but she handled it well, and was eager to continue her humanitarian work in the galaxy. Having children only inspired her to be better as a leader than she already was. Part of Anakin and Padme's agreement with the Jedi was that Luke and Leia would be trained by council members when they were old enough to be Padawans. They knew they wouldn't be full-time Jedi, so the purpose of this was to just ensure that they used their emotions correctly, and used the Force correctly too. The thought was that they were meant to be the following generation's chosen one, so they wanted them to be ready to maintain the balance that their father helped bring to the galaxy. When Palpatine finally returned, he was welcomed with open arms, and the Jedi, despite never training a student, promoted him to Jedi Master. His hard work and dedication to the Jedi Code enforced the Jedi belief in him as an individual within their order. He was fully sold on the idea of being a Jedi. He was still a bit emotional, like Anakin, but he proved the Jedi wrong about the Sith, that they could be changed. Being the final one of their evil legacy should have had its overbearing consequences. However, because of Skywalker and his own personal focus at the task at hand, he proved them wrong. He proved that everyone was capable of change. Master Palpatine immediately became enthralled in relief efforts in the Outer Rim. Having changed so much and having seen so much change in the galaxy, he wanted to be a helping hand, so he joined Ahsoka in the Outer Rim. He was still very close to Skywalker, but he very quickly developed a bond with Skywalker's little sister, continuing his own familial legacy as the grandfather of the Skywalkers. Over the years, he found himself on the High Council next to Anakin and even as the instructor of Luke Skywalker. Obi-Wan was Leia's instructor though. By the time Palpatine joined the High Council, he was one of the most remarkable Jedi of their generation, installing Jedi outposts in the Outer Rim cities to help with the rebuilding process, sponsored by the Republic expansion. He inspired everyone, and with Yoda having stepped down, replaced by Master Windu as the new Grand Master, Palpatine took the seat of Master of the Order. His intelligence was something that could not be overstated, and due to his primary focus on the Jedi, he was able to help out significantly, devising strategies that would best benefit both the Jedi and the people of the galaxy. He did teach a couple of basic level classes for younglings, and many younglings wanted to be his student, but that spot was reserved for his great-grandson. Family time with the Skywalkers was always great, because it had everyone. Padme's side felt a little left out because they were the only ones who couldn't use the Force, but it's alright, they were still included in everything. Palpatine's turn from darkness wouldn't just mark the end of the Sith, but the end of a corrupted era for the Republic. The Clone Wars era had come and gone, and what remained was an era of which people thrived. People looked out for each other, and happiness triumphed. Palpatine in his own life got to spend the next several decades of his life as the happiest version of himself. But that happiness wasn't just exclusive, it was shared around, as before the end of his own life, he'd have the distinct honor of being a great-great-grandfather in the Skywalker family. And that, my friends, is our wholesome story. Again, special thanks to our patrons, Galvin Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granddaddy Bane, Cullen Rooney, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewoo 670, Anakish Dank Runner, CT7567, Christopher, Toaster Oven, Azavaz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny Naguin, Sansa Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Calig, Youngly Slayer 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin003, Dr. Draken, Photo60, Star Wars, Airbus, Rex the Wolf, the main three first names, Dark Saint 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing for supporting the channels. Smash that like button if you want to see more wholesome stories. Support me in other ways, can check out Patreon. That's down there for updates on Sith Clone Wars and animations that are coming soon. Otherwise, let's talk about the story. Yes, I know this is the most unlikely thing in the galaxy. Is this also a what if? Yes! So that's pretty cool. So aside from that, this was just meant to be fun. It's supposed to be wholesome. It's supposed to be endearing. It was hard trying to figure out how to get Palpatine to turn, but I think him feeling like a grandfather, feeling a familial connection for the first time, was really the only thing I had going to make this turn feel somewhat legitimate. It was fun having him as a Jedi. I'm thinking about doing a remaster of the Jedi one because it's just fun having Palpatine as a Jedi, as a hero, and not the object of, destruction in every video. So anyways, hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.